Thank you to those that have already joined. We'll get started in a few minutes, just waiting for a few more attendees to join. Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on Ready to Migrate to Catchpoint. We're going to show you with a demo today. So without further ado, I want to introduce the presenters. So Bob, firstly, over to you.
Thank you, Samantha. Hi, everyone. My name is Bob Ruggiero. I am the Director of the Solutions Engineering team here at Catchpoint, and I'll be driving most of the technical demonstration today, along with my colleagues.
Thank you, and Karthik.
Thanks, Samantha. Hi, everyone. This is Karthik. I'm the Director of Professional Services at Catchpoint. I'm joining here, Bob, and excited to discuss with you about this.
And finally, to Mike, who works also for BMC, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Mike Yates. I'm a 28-year veteran here at BMC, Senior Principal Solution Engineer, working very closely with the Catchpoint guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so Bob, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Samantha. And thank you, everyone, for joining. We appreciate you taking the time. So quick agenda for today's session. I'm going to start off with just an overview of the current state, and most of you are pretty familiar already, I think, with the announcement around the end of life for Micro Focus Silk. So we'll talk a little bit about the timing of when that will be happening. Then we'll start to transition into some of the core capabilities, use cases, value drivers of the Catchpoint solution. And more importantly, the business outcomes that Catchpoint can help you achieve. From there, we'll talk about how Catchpoint can integrate into BHUM. And I'll hand things over to Mike, and Mike will talk through the combined value of the Catchpoint and BMC Solutions. Then we'll come back, we'll hand it over to Karthik, and Karthik will talk through the migration process, moving from Micro Focus to Catchpoint and how we can help really speed up the time to value. So let's start with the recent end-of-life notice. So the reason why we're here today is to discuss the transition to Catchpoint. As many of you are probably aware, about a year ago, Micro Focus announced the end of life for the Silk products. Officially, that will be end of life in May of 2024. Earlier this year, BMC introduced a new market zone direct partner, and that's why we're here. That's Catchpoint. We're very excited to be part of the market zone direct family, and looking forward to great things going forward. But today we'll talk about how Catchpoint can help replace the value in the use cases that you're getting out of Silk. But even more importantly than replacing the use cases, it's how we can combine that value by a direct integration with BMC, so you can add incremental value to your business. And it's really that additional value that we'll highlight throughout this presentation. So let's start with some of the basics. Why do we monitor in the first place? Well, it's because of customers, right? We all have customers. Some of us may have customers that are internal customers within our organization. Some of us have customers that are external. But ultimately, we're responsible for providing a service in a good quality digital experience to those customers. And in today's world, it's not enough for the application to be simply available. Users expect that application to be reachable wherever they're located, whenever they need it, and they expect that application to be fast. And on top of that, they expect those experiences to be consistent time and time again whenever they go to that application. we talk about that in terms of they expect us to be resilient. For most organizations today, they know that in order to provide a good quality of experience, they need to monitor, and they need to monitor from an end user's perspective. But monitoring from an end user's perspective on its own is really what we call just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We all know IT is becoming more and more complex. That complexity has introduced gaps in visibility that most monitoring strategies today just don't address. Because you're focused solely on the end user experience, those risks can be introduced throughout your testing and your testing practices. And a lot of times those risks are right below the surface. Cloud services, DNS providers, impact of local ISPs, CDNs, BGP routing, DNS. All of these services can have an impact on the end user experience. And the problem with a lot of these services is that most organizations and most monitoring strategies today have little visibility, little control over them. So when you're just monitoring from a user, yes, it can detect that there's a problem, but truly understanding the root cause of that problem goes unnoticed. And that's what Catchpoint will help provide. It's the insights below that sea level so you can navigate around the iceberg, and we say, help you avoid becoming the Titanic. So we've developed a monitoring strategy, which we call IPM, or Internet Performance Monitoring. So we do this by monitoring across your entire internet stack so we can catch issues before they impact your business. Now, IPM, most of you may be familiar with APM monitoring, application performance monitoring. Think IPM as APM, but for the internet. So where APM covers everything in the application stack, IPM monitors everything across the internet stack. Now, I'm not suggesting that just by monitoring across the internet stack, magically all of your problems go away. But what this does do is it allows you to become more resilient and your applications to become more resilient. So when there is an issue, how quickly can you respond to that issue and get things back up and running? Right? And to ensure true resilience, we feel you can't just monitor for availability. You need to make sure that applications are reachable to all of your users. And that's a big difference from an application being available, right? The application could be up, but is it accessible from where your users are located? They need to be performing up to user expectations, so the performance needs to be strong, and it needs to be reliable over time. So how does Catchpoint do that? Well, first off, we monitor from where it matters. We have the largest monitoring network in the world. In the 15 years that Catchpoint has been in existence, we have built up a monitoring infrastructure with vantage points all around the globe. So we have a public monitoring node of networks that we've deployed to ISPs, service providers, backbone providers, right? All the transit providers that deliver the internet to you and network to customers. We have nodes in those locations. So if you have users that are based in North America, or you have users that are based in APAC, we can actually test and run executions from those locations to make sure that the user's experience is up to par. We also have the ability to take that same capability, but bring it on-prem within your own network. So we call those enterprise nodes, probably similar to what you're doing with Micro Focus today, where you're running tests for internal applications. We have the ability to provide that as well. And we'll talk more about this as we go through our demonstration, but we are now up to nearly 2,400 vantage points all around the globe. So let's talk about some of the incremental value that you can get through the Catchpoint solution versus what you're seeing today with Micro Focus. So with Micro Focus, traditionally, the testing strategy has really put an emphasis on application synthetics. And in a lot of cases, those were built for legacy type applications. Well, if you look at what you'll be able to move towards using Catchpoint, it's an evolution beyond application synthetics, but focus on internet synthetics. So everything you could do previously from an application, still possible with Catchpoint, but now that deeper level visibility across the internet stack. And it's designed from the ground up for modern web applications. Today, you're probably doing a lot of basic availability, maybe some performance monitoring of that application. With Catchpoint, you're going to be able to evolve to internet resilience across the entire stack. So when there's a problem, you'll know exactly, is it the app? Is it some ISP that is down because a cable was cut over the ocean, under the ocean, contributing to problems? All right, we're going to provide that visibility. With Micro Focus, there's no real visibility into the true end user experience, especially for mission critical applications. So we call this our real user data. With Catchpoint, we do have the ability to supplement or complement all of our synthetic testing with real user monitoring across your most critical customer and employee applications. Testing today with Micro Focus primarily done on-prem. With Catchpoint, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we have testing locations from nearly 2,400 vantage points around the globe. And then lastly, when it comes to integrating and with any monitoring or testing tool, you never really want it to be in a silo, right? If it's in a silo, then the value and the impact that it has on your workflows and in your business, is minimized to some extent. So with Micro Focus, there is an integration with the TSOM infrastructure, but with Catchpoint, what we'll be able to do is integrate directly with Helix intelligent integrations. And Mike will be talking about this here in a moment. So what I'd like to do now is switch gears a little bit, and we're going to jump into a demonstration so you can start to see how we create a test, how we add it into our system, and then view a little bit of the data at the same time as well. So I'm going to bring up a very simple application that we use for a lot of our demo purposes, which is a banking type application. So I'm going to go to that app. All right, and what we'll do is we'll start the recorder here. And as I start that recorder, you'll start to see the recorder will capture all of the interactions that we're doing in the application. So I click into the username, I click into the password, I click sign in. This is not my actual bank balance. So, I wish that was the case. So no need grabbing the account number here. But then what we'll do is we'll go and we'll deposit funds. I'll put in a dollar amount for those funds. We'll hit deposit, and then we'll go ahead and log out. And that's it. Very, very simple, but it's easy to create that test inside of this Chrome extension. So all our recorder is an extension that you can pull down from the Chrome store. Now what I can do is I can copy that test and upload it into the Catchpoint portal. So let's go through that process. So I'll bring up Catchpoint. And because I was in my slides for a little too long there, I do have to log back in. Okay, so now we're inside of the Catchpoint portal, and I can go and add any new tests that I created. So here's a list of all of the tests that we've defined so far within our system. And by clicking new, we'll see a list of new tests that we have available within our Catchpoint solution. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the web transaction type tests that you're probably pretty familiar with today with Micro Focus are still available with Catchpoint. But above and beyond what you're doing today, we also have tests that target that internet stack. We've recently introduced Playwright. So anyone that's familiar with Playwright, we now have the ability to record playwright tests. We can do front-end web page testing, looking to optimize the experience of the application. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the tests because we are focused on, sort of the transactional type tests. But many organizations or many applications have specific API services, endpoints that you want to test directly. We support that. And then we start getting lower and lower in the internet stack, targeting things like DNS providers, transport type tests, ping tests, trace route, BGP monitoring, SSL checks, right? You can see kind of that extensive list of tests that we provide. To create a new test, all I have to do is click into the transaction. In this case, we're going to run it from Chrome, and I can go ahead and paste that content in, and that's really it. Now we're off and running. The only thing I would need to do from here is specify where I want that test to run from. So as I mentioned earlier, Catchpoint supports a global network of monitoring nodes across just about every continent except for Antarctica. So if I have customers or users that are based in Europe and they're hitting our application from Germany, I can click into this and select any number of nodes that I want to monitor that from or run that test from. That could also be, as I mentioned earlier, on-prem. So that same agent capability that you're looking at here could be deployed to your data center. It could be deployed to a local office. It could be deployed to a branch office, and we'd be able to run the test from those locations as well. So now we've added our test. I'll take a look at one here that I've had running. It's the same exact functionality that we just looked at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into some of the data so you can start to see what the output looks like that we're collecting. So this is that same deposit funds transaction. We're looking at this information right now over the last 6 hours. I'm going to expand that just to get a little more data. We'll look at the last 24 hours. And more importantly, we have a timeline of how well and what the consistency of that response has looked like, and if there were any errors or failures that were detected during that time. We then break down the performance of that transaction into each individual step. So the homepage, the login, go into the deposit, making a deposit, logging out. Now you will notice that we did have some downtime over the last 24 hours on a few of these pages. We'll dig into that here in a moment. But from a performance standpoint, I can look at how long each page is taken to load. We also have other supporting data to understand why a page may not be performing as well as we expected. Is it because it took a long time for the page and the content to become interactive? Did it take a long time for the document event to complete? How long did it take for the content to load? We also provide web vital information like first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shifts. There is HTTP level components like DNS times, time to connect, time to establish an SSL connection. Really all of the supporting data that you would need to help troubleshoot potential performance issues. We also have the ability to correlate that to network level metrics. So while we're running this test, we're also doing ping tests and traceroute tests at the same time. So now we can look to see if there's latency at a particular hop between our node that's running it and the eventual destination. This becomes really powerful, especially in monitoring from remote locations or overseas locations, coming back to a data center that might be housed locally. You can see if there's any latency along the way. From here, I can drill down. We have a map level view that shows us all of the monitoring nodes that we're running our test from today. So geographically, I can immediately get a picture into potential problem areas that might be affecting a specific geo. Mike is actually going to show a much better version of this here in a moment. But this has to give you a taste from the Catchpoint perspective. The last thing that I want to show is how to drill down into a particular failure and do a little more of a deeper dive diagnostic. One of the unique capabilities of our solution is that we store all of our raw data for 3 years. So if you needed to do month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year reporting, you can absolutely do that. In this screen, I'm just looking at the last 24 hours, but I can see every single test that we ran. So we can kind of get a glimpse into the band of response times that we're getting, where it's ranging anywhere between 0 and 4 seconds. But we do have these red triangles, which indicate a failure. I know exactly where that test failed from by mousing over it. And now by clicking into that event or that test, we'll start to see what that error message was. In this case, we got a message that said an assertion that I added into the script. So I'm looking to make sure we actually get a message back that says that the deposit was successful. That did not appear. It tells us what page that test failed on. And now what I can do is I can actually step through our transaction. And for each one of those steps, I have a screenshot as to what that page looked like. So visually, I can see, what we were actually getting as the page returned. And in this case, we got this message that says this website's a simulation. Please don't include real personal information. So as I was entering these details, hitting deposit, this message actually popped up, which was interesting. I actually need to look at that. Usually we'll see some DNS failures. This is a new one. So I know exactly, why that test failed, and if this were a real user executing the application, what was contributing to that. The last thing I wanted to show is in cases where a test is successful, we also have what's called our waterfall chart. So instead of just telling you that a page took 5 seconds, right, what we'll also be able to do is tell you why that particular page took X amount of seconds. We look at the performance of every single object that loaded on that page, from JavaScript files, style sheets, images, video. And for each one of those files, we'll tell you how long it took to do a DNS lookup, how long it took to connect to the server, how long it took to establish an SSL connection, and then how long did it take to wait? How long did we have to wait before the content actually came back? And then we go ahead and load it. So now I can start to identify if there's third-party services within our application that might be a bottleneck in contributing to overhead that's impacting the user experience. So that's just a quick glimpse into one of the workflows and one of the use cases here with Catchpoint. Now, one of the things that I should stress is that with all of the metrics that I was showing you, we can set up alerting for those metrics. So if we exceed a particular deviation or a baseline that you establish, then we can notify the right folks. And that notification could be something as simple as an email that goes out, or it can get more sophisticated where we start to integrate into other solutions. And this is where I want to hand it over to Mike. And Mike is going to walk through what that integration step looks like, and more importantly, the combined value they can get with BHOM and Catchpoint.
Thanks, Bob. Let me share my desktop.
Mike, while you're sharing the desktop, I would just remind those that have joined that if you do have any questions during any of the presentations, if you can put them into the Q&A section of Zoom, and then at the end, we will have about 15-20 minutes for live Q&A.
Cool. Can you see my desktop just fine?
Yep.
Goody, goody. So what I wanted to do here was show how Catchpoint actually integrates into BHOM. I grew up with Silk Performer, so I know a lot about the Silk side of the house. Before I even start anything, the first thing I do want to say, working with Catchpoint has been a dream. Bob's been so helpful, it's untrue. But we've really tried to make it far more simple than ever it was with the Silk Performer solution. And we've got straight integration to Catchpoint. Couple of things straight off the bat. It's the ability to run transactions from multiple locations, not just from the on-prem robots, that is huge. But also when I talk about operations, I always say you need to do two things. You need to monitor from below, i.e. the infrastructure, but obviously you need to monitor the end users as well. And the Catchpoint solution's given us much more options than we ever had with Silk. We're going to have a look at media service, just to give you an idea of where it integrates into BHOM. So I've got a business service within my BHOM environment using AI ops, etc. We've got the standard root cause analysis. I know what's been going on with the transaction or my media service. I need to see what I need to go and fix. But at the same time, I've got the synthetic transactions, or these synthetic transactions are the ones that are failing. The great thing with this could be proactive notification that the application is beginning to fail. So they're coming in just like any other events within a BHOM environment. And how do we do that? We do that very simply using the intelligent integrations that we've got built into BHOM. So my Catchpoint, I'm pulling not only alerts, so just like Bob said, if we're doing any alerting in Catchpoint, we will pull those directly into BHOM. But more importantly, I'm pulling in metrics. These we can obviously do the baselining within BHOM. It's just like any other number. And I can filter what I actually need to see. So I don't have to pull everything in. I can pick and choose what data comes into BHOM. So it's straight out of the box standard intelligent integrations that allows me to get these metrics, events, and topology coming directly into BHOM. So we've made it very simple. And then if you start looking at how we can integrate that data, so within here, I've got an SRE type dashboard against media service. But my most important one here is my synthetic transaction time. I'm just looking at the total transaction time, and I can see the events that came in from Catchpoint into this media service. But just like Bob was showing, I can then launch directly from there straight to the smartboard and go through exactly what Bob was showing you before, looking at all the transactions. I see I've got my alert. I could drill in and see all that information. That integration is huge. But another way you can look at it is over a particular time using our dashboarding capabilities. I'm looking at events coming from Catchpoint, but I can then plot them on a graph or on a map, whether it be a worldwide map, or in this case, I've just got one event coming through, but I can see everything about that event. If I needed to cross-launch into Catchpoint, I can from there. So that integration from Catchpoint to BHOM is huge. It's simple to set up. And the other thing, and I'll emphasize what Bob was showing with the recording, it's actually, I found it a lot easier and a lot simpler than the transaction recording from Silk Performer. So yes, what is Catchpoint giving us? Well, it's giving us everything we need from an understanding my business service or understanding my applications. It gives us proactive notification if I start baselining the metrics coming back from Catchpoint. And the metrics can be huge. So just an example, these are all the metrics that are coming from a single transaction. I could be generating alarms from any of these just from within BHOM. I don't necessarily have to worry about Catchpoint generating the alarms. If I just do the transaction, I've got all the capabilities in BHOM to do that as well. So that's really where Catchpoint comes in. From a service monitoring perspective, I now understand not only the underlying infrastructure, but I'm also understanding how my end users are seeing this information. I actually have a Catchpoint agent running on my laptop, so I can even look at laptop capabilities getting into my applications as well. Not showing here, but that capability is there as well. So we really do cover the gamut with the Catchpoint environment, whether it's real user, whether it's synthetic, whether it's actual laptops getting into there. All that information can feed into BHOM, and then we can use that just like any other alarm that we have in BHOM. So yes, the integration with Catchpoint is simple, it works, it's effective, but I just love the fact that we can now do this from multiple locations around the globe, not just on-prem like we used to do with Silk Performer. So that's what I've done with Catchpoint as far as BHOM and AI Ops within the BMC solution. Bob, back over to you.
Thank you, Mike. As always, fantastic presentation. The feeling is mutual in terms of just the excitement that we have on our side. With Catchpoint, we do a phenomenal job of identifying application issues from an end user's perspective, but there was always that gap of being able to drill down and understand what's contributing to that, and the integrations now that we have in place allow us to do that seamlessly. So what I'd like to do is start to talk about how we can help you start this migration. With any solution like this, I'm sure many of you that are on the phone have dozens, if not hundreds, maybe even thousands of potential tests that you've developed with the Silk solutions. We want to make sure that we speed up that time to value, right, as you look at migrating. So what I wanted to do was hand things over to Karthik and have Karthik talk through some of the different options that we provide that can help manage that migration.
Thanks, Bob. Hi, everyone again. So in addition to the amazing capabilities from the product that Bob and Mike just spoke, Catchpoint also offers a dedicated team, a 24/7 team of experts who help customers with migration and also monitoring their tests. So as part of Catchpoint Professional Services, we have 3 offerings, and I'm going to walk you through them. The first one is a migration service where, as I said, the dedicated team of experts who have skill sets in JavaScript and Selenium can help migrate your tests as it is from existing Silk Performer to Catchpoint. And in addition to migrating your tests, the team can also help maintain the tests. I'll talk a little more about the maintenance part in the next slide. And we also provide a complete care solution where we not only create and maintain your tests, but we also monitor them 24/7 for any availability or performance issues. So to elaborate a little more about our scripting services and what we do as part of the service. So the goal of the service is to help our customers focus on actual issues that are impacting your real users. And at the same time, help your teams in triaging any alerts that have been triggered due to change in the application flow. So as part of scripting services, the Catchpoint Professional Services team will create and monitor your transaction tests. We monitor 24/7 throughout the year. And if there is any change in the application flow or elements on the application, then that could trigger failures of your tests. So Catchpoint PS team will triage those failures, identify the changes in your application, and then update the scripts to accommodate the new changes. This will ensure that you have reliable data and you don't get impacted due to any changes on your application. So you can see that some of the key benefits of our scripting service is really to help you focus on real issues, make it more actionable for you, and at the same time, offload the maintenance of scripts to Catchpoint PS team. And this will also help reduce the false positives that are going to trigger to your application due to changes in the application. And then help your teams in offload, maintenance of transaction tests to Catchpoint PS team who have the expertise to do this. So this is one of the ways, in addition to the product capabilities, Catchpoint Professional Services team can make your migration to Catchpoint a seamless and more easier experience. Thanks, Bob. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Karthik. All right, so we have a few minutes left. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we announced this partnership earlier this year, and we've already been working with a number of Micro Focus customers, helping them with the migration and ultimately getting the value. And during that time, there have been a number of questions that have come up. And so before we open it up to the entire audience here and see if you have additional questions, there are a few that come up over and over again. And so what I thought I'd do is kind of get ahead of that and talk through it. So first one, and we started off the presentation with this one, was when will the Micro Focus products be obsolete? The official date is May 31st, 2024. But depending on your maintenance contracts, that could be sooner. But the official end of life date is May 31st of next year. Where can I run tests from? Well, as we spent some time talking about in the demo, tests can be run from our public infrastructure nodes, our on-premise, what we call an enterprise node. We also have a real user endpoint agent that Mike referenced that can actually monitor the end user experience in real time of your employees in your workforce when they're accessing an application. Is there a direct migration from Silk Performer, Silk Test to Catchpoint? No, there is no direct migration. So it does require those scripts to be developed. You saw how easy that was to do using the recorder. So certainly a lot of organizations can do that work themselves. But if you do want assistance to really speed up that time to value and get onto the Catchpoint solution faster, as Karthik mentioned, we do offer professional services that could support that. Is Catchpoint a SaaS application that runs in the cloud? We are a SaaS platform. We are running in the cloud, but we are not located inside of AWS or Google or Azure. And we did that deliberately. That was a conscious decision not to be part of kind of the public cloud environments, because sometimes those cloud environments go down. So we wanted to separate ourselves from that. That way, if the cloud environment is down, we're not. And more importantly, you're not. So you still have visibility into your applications. So we are hosted in a private data center in Las Vegas. And we have a command and control center that's global. Does Catchpoint support voice or VoIP? Yes, we do. We do have the ability to monitor both from a synthetic perspective, emulating voice traffic, as well as real user experience, where we can measure call quality through our endpoint agent. And then lastly, one of the questions we'll get often is, what solutions does Catchpoint support? A lot of what we've been talking about today is more application experience. We talked a little bit about website experience. For customer-facing applications, that same monitoring strategy of being able to look from an outside-in perspective becomes really powerful. So we do offer solutions and services around customer experience. And then the network telemetry, as well as your employee workforce, your employee experience, we support that as well. So those are really the 5 solutions that Catchpoint offers. All right. The last thing I always like to kind of talk through a what's next slide. So hopefully this session was valuable and gave everyone an insight into what Catchpoint can do and how we can help you move from kind of a traditional availability focused monitoring strategy to an internet resilient strategy. So if you do have any additional questions, feel free, reach out to your local BMC rep to learn more. And hopefully we look forward to working with you in the future and provide more capabilities to improve your workforce, your customers, your applications, and your network. So with that, Samantha, I don't know if there's any other questions that kind of came in as we were chatting.
Obviously a very good presentation, because we've had no questions in the Q&A, but I have taken liberty to unmute everyone. So if there is any questions from our attendees, this is a good opportunity to ask Catchpoint and BMC. We'll give it a few minutes, Bob.
Okay.
And why people are just working out whether or not they want to ask us questions. What I will just remind everyone is the presentation that we've shared today will be going out onto YouTube. I will be sending out a thank you email with all the details. So that will be with a survey, any slides that have been shared, links, and also this is a recording. So if you do want to look back, there will be a follow-up email coming if it's not today, tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to assume there isn't any questions. Thank you finally then to our hosts, presenters and panelists. I know we did have extra people join today just in case we had any questions. So thank you to the team. Thank you for the attendees. And as mentioned, I will be sending a follow-up. If there are any technical questions and we feel that it's worthwhile having a Ask the Expert session, do look out for further updates on our Helix webinar page, which is on communities, and we will update it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.